Hello, Salem, and welcome to CC Media Presents Our Community Matters. I'm your host, Evan Remington. Christy Perry has served as the superintendent of Salem-Keizer Public Schools, the second largest school district in Oregon, since 2014. At the end of June, she is retiring, following her 9th year at Salem-Keizer, 19th year overall as superintendent, and after more than 30 years in education. On today's show, we welcome the 2021 Oregon Superintendent of the Year as she joins us in studio to reflect on her career with the district. Christy Perry, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So many things have happened since you've come on board in Salem-Keizer, but let's start by talking about one of the things I'm most excited about, CTEC, the Career and Technical Education Center. It opened early in your tenure in September 2015. It was an innovative public-private partnership, and there were some challenges with that. Tell us about your role and what lies ahead with CTEC.
So CTEC is like my favorite thing to talk about. And CTEC, the night I signed my contract, the school board also signed a memorandum of understanding with Mountain West Investments to create a career technical center. And so I remember in that moment I thought, oh wow,
that's big.
This is big. This is big. I didn't know how big it was, but it's like, wow, this is something that I've signed my contract, but I've not done this before. Mm-hmm. So we were entering a planning year as my first year. So the property had been identified, Mountain West was clearly at the table, and we began to think about a planning principle. And somewhere in that, I remember I got a phone call from a community partner that's like, hey, I think you need to be at the table a little more often around this project because there's just lots of details that the public-private partnership entails, and it's just going to need a lot of your attention. So I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And so about October, November, Jason Tokarski and I began meeting weekly to talk. So brand new superintendent, big project, learning a lot, and we started meeting weekly because there were just things that in business they do differently than what we do in public schools, and there's even different building specs when you put education into a building instead of a private business. So we had conversations every week. We master planned the building, we brought architects to the table, and we were really insistent that this was going to be something new and very different for our kids in our community. The best part of the way we accomplished it was we built strong relationships. So a stronger than ever relationship with Mountain West Investments in that project. And we rolled out the programs year after year. So we started with 2 programs. Right. We opened our doors. We brought kids in from all of our high schools. And the innovation around how we did school, there were lots of places that even the educators in the system wanted to fall back to, here's how we do school. And I, from my level, needed to be like, no, we're going to do school different. And so that was the really fun part, but it did take leadership from the superintendent level because simple things like, we're just going to put a school counselor in there, not just a school counselor, but they have an academic counselor at their home high school. So we entered into a conversation with the chamber about having business liaisons there instead of a traditional school counselor. Now, over time, we've added counselor, social worker there as we've had more kids, but every step of the way, we tried to think differently about how we built and how we educated kids in the center. So that's been really great. The thing I love the most about CTEC, well, many things, but it's a very organic space. So you go there one day and it looks one way, and 2 weeks later, they've done something and it looks different. And it's helping us also, we're evolving. So next year, we're going to shift and have an aviation program out at the airport.
Great.
So, and then in the space where we had aviation, we're opening up the first ever mental health pathways to clinician pathway in a, and we have, it's like our second favorite program that kids are signing up for, pathway to a mental health counselor, a school counselor. And so I'm thrilled about our ability in the way we set it up to be really adaptable. And then the last thing I'm super proud of is that many of the lessons we learned at CTEC have now been applied into all of our high schools. So we have 10 programs there, but we have 54 state-approved programs district-wide. You know, we have the fire tower at West Salem High School. We have sports medicine at Sprague. We have digital broadcasting at South. We have a great ag program, the only ag program in the district out at McKay. So every school, diesel mechanics at McNary High School. So it became an incubator for other things in other schools. So I love all of how it's kind of transformed our district in ways too.
Yeah, that's so exciting. It's absolutely wonderful.
I'm super thrilled about the airport. We're excited to partner with whatever commercial airline comes in there in some new and fun ways.
Yeah. So help me understand that. I'm actually in the process. I'm very close to getting my private pilot's license currently.
Okay.
So is this to address the pilot shortage and to help with the development of commercial pilots, or?
It will be a little bit of everything, because what the airlines have a shortage in all areas. So aircraft technicians, the people who work on the navigation systems, the pilots, the people who fuel the airplanes, TSA. And you know, we have a law enforcement strand out at CTEX. There could be some partnerships potentially with TSA. So we've purchased a hangar out at the airport, and we'll have kids show up there. Any high school can send kids as well. And then we'll begin working on some of those basic certifications. The kids who want to go the pilot route will be able to get their ground school finished. I think they have to be 18 to sit through the test. But again, lots of kids turn 18 in their senior year, and then they can go on from there. So we'll kind of give them the foundation.
That's exciting.
I know, and at no cost.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yep.
So one of your accomplishments was elevating student voices. The school board now has student advisors in the boardroom. Can you help us understand how that came to fruition and why you thought it was important?
Yeah, we started prior to that with a district-wide student equity committee. And that was run out of our equity office, and we would bring students from all of our high schools. It used to be a little different model than that for high school student voice, so it was kind of there, but we began that district-wide equity committee work with our students. And it just became so powerful, the importance of the voice of our students. Like they're just real. They just tell you how it is, and they're very instructive about what's going well and what isn't going well in schools. And so somewhere along the way, board members said, hey, should we have a student advisor to the board? So we developed a policy. We had our first student advisor, Lynette, who was on the board. And so just really centered student voice at the highest level of the organization. I was visiting with our mayor yesterday and talking about, are there other places in city government that we could really begin getting student voice in? Our kids are very civic minded. They have strong, well thought out opinions about how the world can be better. And as adults, we should really listen to that. One of the things when they were doing the superintendent search that I, again, really proud of, everywhere they went, the search consultants were like, it's kind of different here. There's something about, everyone brings up the importance of students in your decision making. We don't hear that everywhere. And I was like, wow, really? But that's really the sign that it has taken hold. And so it was one of the criteria they put in the search as far as an important characteristic. And they're like, it was so important. We heard it in so many places. We had to put it in the description.
Yeah.
And so that's when it tells you that whatever you've done has mattered, because it's in other places.
It's part of the culture.
It's part of the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So as superintendent, you've seen the district dropout rate cut in half, which is very exciting. And there's been a 7.5% increase in the graduation rate. In a district with 40,000 students, that's significant. What has worked to improve these numbers?
Yeah, so I think what's worked is a lot of attention to keeping track of the system. So, you know, in a high school, at this point in the year, our high school principals know kids and exactly where they are, whether they're on track or not for graduation. So that's one place in the system that we keep a really close eye. The other place we keep a really close eye is when kids transition from 8th to 9th grade. That's a really, that can be a risk point for kids. And so if you are watching kids at 9th grade and you see them starting to flounder, if you can intervene then, it gets them on track. So it's the system of really watching kids and insisting that every kid gets across the stage. Part of our work at the district level is we have a number of college and career specialists that will actually go in and help kids at this point in the year get across the stage. We've had some of our community resource specialists who, 2 days before graduation are still sitting with a student to make sure they get across the stage. And then they show up at graduation and, give them a hug when they come off the stage. So it's being really intentional about knowing who your kids are and whether they're on track or not. And then a really important strategy is our career technical education. Kids who are engaged in high school perform better than kids who don't have something that they love and care about. And so we have strong music programs that engages kids. We have strong CTE programs across all of our high schools now that engages kids, athletics, activities, lots of clubs. And we tend to think of those as the extras in school, but really they have to be a part of that high school experience, because while some kids love reading, writing, and math, what kids really love is music and hands-on education. When you go into any of our CTE programs at any of our high schools, you see kids engaged in learning, and that's a critical part. The magic at CTech is that we could add that core content credit. So if a student is in graphic design, they get an anatomy credit or science credit as well. And so then they're engaged both hands-on in the technical side and hands-on in the academic side as well. They connect. It's meaningful work. So I think that's another space. And then we have robust summer schools. So, you don't get across the stage. You come back in the summer and we help you graduate before August so that you can still graduate on time. We have a summer graduation every year because we think it's really important. You still put on your cap and gown and walk across the stage. So there's lots of pieces in it, and a lot of adults working really hard to see kids and make sure they're successful.
Yeah, I see that on the parent side of things. My daughter's a junior at Sprague High School, and I think that transparency and parent view and just being able to see where they are with credits is so interesting. And it's had an effect on my daughter where I can hear her and her friends having conversations of like, well, if we double up, on math, then, our senior year, we don't have to, work as hard or whatever they're trying to finagle. But I just think that's a perfect example of just having that transparency. It's kind of like that old adage of if you can measure it, you can manage it kind of thing.
Yeah, that communication with parents through that Parent Square app and even to know when your kids are absent.
Right.
Notification comes. It's just really, for parents who can engage and be partners, it's really helpful. And kids can manage their own academics, especially when it's really transparent to them.
Right.
They can see their score, they can see their grade, and kids are motivated to pay attention to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. So one of the other initiatives to find success during your tenure is the dual language program. It's where students learn literacy and context in English and in Spanish, and it continues to expand across the district's schools. How does this help all students?
Yeah, so this would have been one of the reasons I'd want to stay 5 more years to see it all the way implemented. But we have previously we had bilingual, transitional biliteracy programs, and we had dual language. And the dual language was in 3 of our schools. And we knew that our kids learning Spanish are changing in that they come with some English, some Spanish. But what we know is that a dual language program where we can put both Spanish-speaking kids learning English and English-speaking kids learning Spanish in the same classroom, that first of all, being bilingual huge brain power there in being bilingual. And what we know is that bilingual kids graduate at a higher percentage than English-only speaking peers. So we're investing in that sort of a structure in as many schools as possible. Our goal is to get to 22 elementary schools. But we put kids in classrooms with grade level peers, and the culture you get, and you're both learning a language, is also really powerful, because it's about the language, but it's also about the cross-cultural connections for our kids. And so we've just really been intentional about being sure that as we're expanding into our Northeast schools, where we have our most students that speak Spanish that are learning English, because it should be an act of equity to be sure they're getting this high quality instruction. And then if we have English students that are English speaking learning Spanish with them, then that's the bonus. So the goal will be that any student will have access to a bilingual education starting in kindergarten.
Right.
And that will help all kids. And we know, but the students that graduate high school and head to college or not, it doesn't matter if they're bilingual, they're much more marketable in the job world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so that's another, we're just setting them up to have a competitive advantage when they can be bilingual.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's good.
So, yeah, we're
is there
thrilled.
something that's done, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah, it's okay.
But I know, just again, all I have is kind of my own experience with my daughter on the parent side of things, but I know that there are challenges sometimes with a dual language school where, due to having to make changes with, one school being more crowded than another, those kinds of things, that some changes have to happen that are maybe sooner than the entire kind of 5-year commitment that as parents we're choosing to participate in. And sometimes those changes come before that 5-year commitment.
I know.
And it's a challenge to readjust, I guess, because I think one of the things that we're buying into is that, okay, well, this might be more of a challenge between grades 2 and 3, but we stick with it, and then we start to see all those benefits you're talking about, grade 4 and 5, and so is there any, can you speak to how you kind of get that continuity with those programs to ensure that each one of the kids who are starting in kindergarten kind of get that whole experience?
Yeah, so yes, I think the benefit is that we're doing it in more schools. So when you have 3, if you think in terms of options and ability to be nimble within the system, when you have more programs in more feeder areas, then if something has to change with a boundary, you have a little more flexibility.
Yeah, sure.
So the goal would be that if a student starts in kindergarten, we want them to keep with it till at least 5th grade.
Right.
We actually want them to go on to middle school and to have it fully aligned. Like, we shouldn't open a program, and this isn't our plan, but we have to open a program that has an elementary, a feeder middle school, and then the high school is prepared for this incoming group of bilingual students as well. So the more places we have it, the less chance of, because you can shift a little bit around the edges and not impact kids in their learning. And that's really critical. If you're going to buy into bilingual education, you need the full 5 to 7 years, because that is what the research says, to be fully bilingual.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about the unified programs, which I don't know anything about, so I'm excited to hear about this. All high schools in Salem-Keizer Public Schools are now recognized by Special Olympics at Unified Champion Schools, if I understand that correctly, which is 8 out of 11 middle schools participate, and it's rolling out in elementary schools too. Can you tell us more about the program and its significance?
Yeah, so one of our strategic plan goals, but also one of my personal goals, is around inclusive practice. And our students with disabilities can benefit incredibly by being in classrooms with students, having access to same grade level content, all of that. But on top of it, being able to have friends and partners in the world. So a unified program is a class or an activity at its basic sense that has students with disabilities and partner peers, so about age level peers. And they partner in a way that they do the activity or the class together. So in a unified PE class, you may have a basketball unit. You're going to have a student with a disability and a partner student, and they're going to play unified basketball together. So that's how a class might work. At South, for example, now we've had a unified culinary class. We've had a unified theater class. Last year I went to a unified production at South Salem. And so what you want to do is try to grow the opportunities, because it is a different type of teaching, but the partner peers get as much out of it as the students with disabilities. And then we have after-school activities. Sometimes you'll also have a student-led council around that's unified, where you have students with disabilities with a partner peer in the leadership structure. So Special Olympics Oregon recognizes a school that has, an activity, a leadership structure, and a class that's unified. And that's when they get a unified banner as a school. I keep asking Special Olympics of Oregon what it takes to be a unified district, and every time I see the director there, I go, "Hey, TikTok, June 30th is coming. I need this done before I leave." That's my goal, is to be a unified district. I don't think they've ever had a district want to be that before, so they don't know how to answer that question. But it is. I'm really proud of the work of our special education department and our educators out in the field that really see this as an important value for all kids, because all kids learn when you can be surrounded with people that are different than you. We had a unified run for the Awesome 3000 on Saturday as well. Thank goodness the Awesome 3000 was back before I retired as well. The Crystal Apple Awesome 3000 were two of my goals to have back this year.
Okay, that's great. So I'm also in the groundwork cohort this year. So awesome. I think that resurrection of the Awesome 3000 may have come out of a special project with one of the groundwork cohorts that is also connected to Mountain West. So that's exciting.
Yeah, the Awesome was super fun on Saturday. And so huge shout out to United Way as they pulled that off. I think they said something like $45,000 and almost 2,000 runners.
That's great. That's exciting. In your resignation letter to the district staff, you wrote that serving our students, staff, and community is what energizes me and fills my heart. What made you decide that now was the time to step down?
Did all this time without crying. It's a lot of work, and it's kind of like time to pass it to the next person. It's in a good place. We got strong leaders, strong educators. We'll always have challenges, but it felt like coming out of the pandemic, like last year wasn't the time, but this year is. So it felt like the right time. I have 4 little grandbabies, one more on the way. Baby Mabel's going to be on the way any day now. And so it feels like a time for me. I'll have to do something, but to really step back and be more family focused. I want to be able to ride my bike to go see those little girls. I want to be able to hang out with our grandson. And so I think it just feels like it was the right time. And certainly leading through the pandemic was hard. So no one expected how hard that would be. And so that takes a toll over time.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your service and your commitment and your leadership.
I've
really
loved it
appreciate
here.
that.
Yeah. Even in the pandemic, I knew I was in the right place. So, it's been really good.
Yeah. Well, thank
really
you.
good.
You absolutely deserve to be with your family, and they deserve to be with their grandmother. And it's nice to be able to hand something off and feel really proud about where it's at.
Yeah, and leaving a job you love doesn't mean you shouldn't leave. It's still, it's how you should leave a job. And that's what I've said all through this year, like, I love this job, but it doesn't mean it's not the right time to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So it's the next season.
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your
Yep.
time.
It was great to be here.
Yeah. We hope that you found this conversation thoughtful with our outgoing superintendent, Christy Perry. She leaves behind a legacy at Salem-Keizer Public Schools at the end of June. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, our community matters. We'll see you next time.